How many times have you watched the original Fast and Furious?
I've watched it at least 100 times. Um, I love the franchise, right? So it's one of my top 3 favorite movies. Fast and the Furious, Terminator 2, and Lion King. Those are my 3 favorite movies. Um, I love everything about car culture. It's one of those things where everyone that's kind of late 20s, 30s, 40s, we all watched Fast and the Furious. We all loved it at its time. And it inspired a whole generation of car lovers. So Fast and the Furious is a remake kind of Point Break from with Keanu Reeves and stuff. And it follows the same kind of story, except it's centered around street racing. And those cars today, the Eclipse, Supra, RX-7, those are so iconic in today's world. And I don't think they realized when they created the film that it would turn into a $1 billion 10-movie franchise. But Fast and the Furious for any car lover is probably one of the greatest franchises for car lovers ever to exist, because you have muscle cars, you have JDM cars, you have Euro cars, you have exotic cars, you have everything. And you know, Fast and Furious 1 is a masterpiece. Fast and Furious is so enjoyable. Tokyo Drift has some of the best car sequences, and it was shot, you know, and the whole theme takes place in Tokyo. And then you have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 that slowly morphs into, I guess, like the hero, espionage, spy, but still have some cars in there. That's what led me to make Four Amigos. Was after about Fast and the Furious 5, they kind of started steering towards international spies and kind of left the tuner cars alone. And I was like, okay, well, there's a niche and there's a space that is neglected and alienated, and I feel like I can help fill that void. So hopefully by this film being successful, because I already wrote the sequel, it's a 3-film series, the sequel's done, and then I know where the 3rd film's going, that it leads to a sequel, but it also leads to other filmmakers to make more tuner-centric films. Because if I'm able to do that and say, okay, hey guys, we don't all have to go to space, or we don't have to all have, you know, these out of these world events take place within the tuner car space, we can create grounded tuner car movies. Then if I can do it, you can do it too. And I would love to watch your film as well, because we all have this common love of cars. So if I open that door and people start busting through the front of the house, and all of a sudden next year there's 5 tuner movies, I would absolutely be thrilled and delighted, because now you have more films that interest you as a tuner lover, right? It's the same as like loving rom-coms or action films or sci-fi space films. The more the merrier. It's the same thing when you think about movies and remakes and sequels and prequels. Like, I love it because it doesn't take away from whatever that original was that was your masterpiece. It's just an expansion on that story.
What is tuner culture?
Tuner culture is a beautiful culture. It's a culture of males, females, different races, ethnicities. It doesn't matter. They all come together for the love of their cars. And it doesn't matter if it's JDM, USDM or UDM, Euro, exotic, Honda Civics. By you expressing yourself through your car almost becomes an avatar of who you are. It becomes almost like a robot, right? It's an extension of you and your soul. That's why there's so much color. There's so much depth. There's so many different styles of builds. You have all motor builds, stance builds, body kits, track builds. You have daily cars. Like, I personally drive a GR86, which is a Toyota GR86. It's the 2nd generation of a BRZ GT86. And I bought that because it's lightweight, rear-wheel drive, and it has adequate power. But tuner culture, they like to tinker with everything. Sometimes you'll have anime decals. You'll have suspension with wheels. You'll have, let me throw on a turbo kit, or let me throw on a supercharger kit. Let me add a chameleon wrap with some 20-inch wheels with low-profile tires. Let me do the interior. So there's so many different ways that tuner culture embraces cars, that there's a high love there for everyone. That's why places like Cars and Coffee, Caffeine and Octane, Car Meets on Tuesday nights, it's such a big thing because you're gathering, right? It's something like what the internet brought for people. There's people that are like you that have the same interests as you. And if you think of your childhood, and I know from my childhood, my best friends, we had one thing in common, and that was cars. My best friend had an MX-6 with a KLZE swap that I later bought from him. I had an MX-3 at the time, and then I bought a CRX. My other friend had a Subaru WRX with a STI swap. My other friend had like a Ford Escort. But we all loved cars. So after school, we'd go meet up with the cars and just have fun, right? Cars are popular and have such a large following and fan base because they're introduced to you as your freedom vehicle when you first get your license at 16. And then they're an extension of who you are when it comes to expression. You're able to show what you have inside on your vehicle and be like, yeah, this is what I drive. This is my whip. So that's why it's so important.
What makes the Fast and Furious franchise so successful?
So we've grown with these characters. We've grown with these characters for now 20 years. From the first Fast and the Furious to Fast and the Furious, now 10. All of us still feel like the passing of Paul Walker. Like to this day, like we all know, like his memorial just took place. We've grown with Vin Diesel, Tyrese, Ludacris. Like we've grown with these characters. And you have two audiences now. You have the tuner culture that will always support Fast and the Furious because there's not many other options out there for car films. Like if you think of rom-coms or anything else, there's plenty of films. But for some reason with tuner films, there just aren't many. No one else wants to tackle it for some odd reason. And then they have action. So now you took the formula of back in the day where action films with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jean-Claude Van Damme and, Predator. You take that and then now you add tuner cars and you combine them. You have a successful recipe. And I think the last 5 films did like $1 billion at the box office or something like that. You're gonna win because even if someone's not into tuner cars, they're into the action. But then the tuner car, which is a multi-billion-dollar industry, they want to see the cars too, if only now with the later films, only if it's for a little bit. You still want to see the NSX or the Supra on a big IMAX screen or in 4K done at the highest level.
How does the Fast and Furious rank in all-time franchises? Do you know?
So I don't know as far as hard numbers, but I know that for me, it's up there with, maybe even surpassed it, Terminator. It's up there with Star Wars. It's definitely up there with Star Wars. I can't really say Marvel because Marvel has like 50 films with characters that have spanned 50 to 100 years that have a really deep following that rooted from comic books. And I don't think anything compares to Marvel right now as far as franchises. But I would put it up there, even though James Bond has a longer list of films, I would put it up there with really any franchise. And what I base films off of, and I know this might be different for a lot of people, are 2 things: enjoyability and can you rewatch it? If you have a masterpiece that you watch, sonically it's amazing, visually it's stunning, editing, everything about it, the film is absolutely brilliant. But when you get done watching it and you got the climax of it, you got the story, and you never watch it again, that kind of sucks. Not that the film sucks, but that kind of sucks that now, because you've seen the crux of it, you're like, okay, I don't really need to watch it again. I've seen it, right? For me, something like a Fast and the Furious, Marvel films, Star Wars, Alien, Terminator, you can rewatch those films and enjoy them. It's like Christmas films during Christmas. You can rewatch them and enjoy them. And I'd rather have a rewatchable film that brings enjoyment, whether you watch it yearly or during specific events, because now that film's living with you. It's growing with you. You're taking it along with you. So Fast and the Furious definitely has that, because even if you're only into the cars, you're able to rewatch it over and over and over if you love cars. And I think that's rewatchability and enjoyment are two major things that I think people overlook when they judge movies. If you judge a movie based on, and you take those things out, and let's say you have something that wins Sundance, right? It's like, oh, it won Sundance, it's a beautiful film. But let's say it doesn't do well financially. And not to say everything has to do well financially, but in a business, it has to do well financially or the whole ship sinks. But you have a beautiful film that wins Sundance, but it doesn't sell to a distributor and it doesn't get out to an audience. Or let's say it does get out to an audience, but they don't think it's that beautiful because they're not a cinephile. They like movies that they can turn their brain off a little bit and just enjoy. And then they live with that film for years and years to come. What do you think has more of an impact? It's like that masterpiece that won Sundance that everyone in the industry claims is the most beautiful film that year, or that Fast and the Furious film or Star Wars film or Marvel film that you can just enjoy and love and watch for your kids and just have a good time. And then you can do the same thing with that same film next year. Which one has a greater impact? I think the film that has rewatchability and you can enjoy.
And you wanted to make your own version.
Yes, I wanted to make my own version as much as I could. And I feel like we accomplished that. It's a tuner film set in Atlanta. You have an enormous collection of cars. You have car sequences that are extended and longer for the car audience than it should have been. For example, if you're going to cut to the scene, maybe you have 1, 2, 3 car shots, and then you go into the scene. I would take that and turn that into 30 shots of cars and then go into the scene. In hindsight, right, as you get better and evolve, you look at your past projects and you're like, man, I wish I could have done this better. Or, oh, I could have did that better. But again, it goes back to the filmmaker. You have to create in that time and space that you're in and do the best that you can do in that time with what you have. Because if you don't, then maybe the opportunity and the timing leaves you. And you may not ever be able to create it again because you waited to try and make it perfect. Like there's certain shots where it would have been nice to have a huge gimbal attached to a truck, and then you get those shots because the shots would have been super steady compared to a little more shakier because you don't have the right gimbal. But that's the gimbal that you have for that shot. So you use it and then you capture what you capture. If you wait to procure that truck, what happens if you're not able to procure that truck? You're not able to procure that gimbal. Something falls through. This actor that you shot all these scenes with no longer can shoot. Something else happens because life happens. So when that energy consumes you and it inspires you to do something, you got to act in that moment, because the moment you second guess, you start giving yourself excuses on not doing it. And a lot of times you won't do it if you don't act in that moment.
And it's sort of like driving as well. You got to just kind of, if you're too focused on being scared of something or whatever, you could actually end up hurting yourself.
100%.
How many cars did you have in Four Amigos?
Man, a lot. So S2000s, VW, Volkswagen, the Jettas, NSX, supercharged BRZs, Chargers, Porsches,
Corvette?
STIs. We had, I don't think we had a Corvette in this film, but we had an NSX racing down the freeway, Mustangs, GT350s, 90s Supras, 2021 Supras, Mark IV, Mark V. You name it, we've had it. And the only legendary really car in that list that we kind of didn't have within the tuner space was an RX-7. So I couldn't procure that, and I wanted to, but we had probably a good, I want to say 40 cars. We had Lamborghinis, Lotuses, Evoras, Aston Martins. We've had a little bit of everything, yeah.
And how did you get these cars again? You put out calls?
Yeah, so for months, I knew that we were gonna film on a specific date. So about 3-4 months in advance, I would go to every car meet, every big car meet, small car meet, and I would get emails and I would get contacts. And this goes back to me selling food in Hawaii, right? I would just hustle, and you'd have people say, no, I'm not interested, or you're a weirdo or whatever. And I would approach everybody. Hey man, I'm gonna shoot this film. Can I get your contact? You might wanna be in it. And I would just compile this list over months. And then when it came time to shoot, it was like, hey guys, I'm shooting. This is what I'm kind of looking for. Do you have it? Do you have it? And because the car community and car culture, they're so loving, they were able to embrace me and help guide me and help me bring this film to life. So, yeah.
So some of them, you gave them the call time and they showed up?
And they showed up. Wow. And a lot of the cars in the movie are real cars. A lot of the actors in the movie with the cars, it's their car.
Oh, cool.
And, you know, I was able to add them to the film and let them be a part of film history. So it was nice. And you know, in the sequel, if I get to the opportunity to make the sequel, it dives deeper into tuner cars. And it's one of those things where I just kind of wanted to give back to a culture that gave me so much joy. And because I realized that there was a gap there and we didn't have many tuner films to watch, I created something for them to watch.
Where can we see it?
So Four Amigos now, it's on Amazon Prime. It's on TVOD, so you can rent it, I think, for $4.99 or $3.99. And then in a couple months, it will be on Tubi TV.
Great.
Yeah.
Excellent.